What I thought the title of this evening's talk could be is uh, Why You Don't Know What You Ought to Know. And we had a similar situation many hundreds of years in the past. And in the prophet Hosea's time, he said in Hosea 4, verse 6, he said, "My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge." And it reminds me of something that Abraham Lincoln said. He said, "I have confidence in the American people as long as they are well informed." And that's the essential thing in a democracy or a republic or any kind of democratic system. You can't make the right decisions unless you have the right information. And this is what we are missing today, the right information. And I want to explain to you why this is so, how it has happened, and what we probably need to do as individuals is to be very careful about where we do get our information from. Now, so what is it that we don't know? Well, there's a lot of things, but I just want to talk about one particular thing tonight, and that is that the United States of America is not a republic. It's actually a corporation. And it was changed in 1871. And all the citizens of America are living under this corporation, and they have been capitalized to be made capital out of. If you look on your birth certificate, in fact, it's not just the only United States of America, but the United States of America is the most important nation when it comes to Bible prophecy in the last days, along with the Catholic Church and God's people, of course. But if you look on your birth certificates, you'll notice that your name is all in capital letters. That means you belong to a corporation. And I know there is some skepticism about this, so I need to provide you some proof. But first of all, why did it happen? Well, after the Civil War, America was broke. And so they went to the Vatican and borrowed money. Yes, the Vatican. And their agents, the Rothschilds. But they wanted these people that they borrowed the money from, they wanted some collateral that they were going to get the money back. So they insisted on America becoming a corporation. And it happened the same time that America set up the District of Columbia. That's when they made a new constitution, very similar to the old one, subtle differences, but that's when they made this America into a corporation. Now, Tiago, can you bring up the first picture that I sent you? And hopefully I can see it, because I want to offer you some proof that this is the case. And this is the American Code. And the American Code is the law code. It's a compilation of all the laws and statutes that have been passed by Congress. And we want to look at the first picture. Can we see it? Are you looking at it, but I can't see it? Is that what the problem is? Because in this document, you have to remember, the United States Code is a compilation of all the laws, statutes, whatever that has ever been passed by Congress. And in section 28, we have definitions. Section 28 is all about defining what things are in America. So we're not. Can you folks see it, but I can't? Is that what the problem is?
We can see it. We can see it. We can see a picture here.
You can see it. No, I can't. That's okay. So if you look up in the top left, no, is it top right-hand corner? No, top left-hand corner. It says definitions. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Now bring up the next picture. I just want to show you that this section is all about defining what things are. And can you see it? Because I can't see it. Have you got the new picture up?
Not yet.
Well, when you get it up, it's going to define what the United States is. And it's going to say federal corporation.
Now it's up.
Can you see it?
Yes.
Can you see where it says what the definition for the United States is? I think it's up in the top, up near the top left-hand corner as well. Up on the left.
We can see security agreement. State means any of the 7 states, and then United States and a federal corporation.
Yes, stop right there. United States. What is the definition of the United States? Federal corporation. Okay, which means the republic no longer exists lawfully. In law, the republic no longer exists. This is part of what you need to know, but you're not allowed to know. And it's many people talk about this. Many people talk about this, but other people like to say, well, that's not true. But I just want to show you that it is true, defined in law by the United States Law Code. So all the people in America are living under a corporation. And that is why, by the way, the same applies to my country, where I come from, New Zealand. I'm not sure about other places. Maybe Norway has done the same thing. I have no idea. But that means that the people who are working in the government, they are no longer working for the people of the country. They're working for the corporation. And this is why it's an essential thing for people to understand. The people that they vote to go to Congress, or in my case, in New Zealand, Parliament, everybody assumes that they are working for the people of the country, but they're not. They're working for the corporation. And this fiction is maintained in a special manner, which I would like to get into as well. Now, if you want to look into this yourself, I suggest you write down somebody's name, a woman's name, Karen Hudes, Hudes. And you can find her videos on YouTube. They're still there. And I'd like to tell you about her. She was a lawyer, a top lawyer for the World Bank. And she found corruption in the World Bank. And she first took it to the leadership of the bank, and they told her to go away. She tried to reveal the corruption to the Congress in with these people who are actually working for a corporation, and they basically told her to go away, and she eventually got fired. But she's a very tenacious lady, and she decided to do what all investigators do. They follow the money. And you can see her on YouTube talking about how she was absolutely astounded where the money went. And she's talking about American taxpayer money. She said it first goes to London and from there to the Vatican and the Jesuits. So that is a very interesting piece of investigative news there, I think. And it's going there because of the loan that America took out all those years ago, and when they changed from a republic into a corporation. soon after that, well, sometime after that, they managed to change the banking arrangements in America by creating the and when I'm talking about, I'm not talking about the government now. I'm talking about individual bankers. They managed to get the Federal Reserve set up in America, which means that the Federal Reserve is an independent bank and it issues the money of the country contrary to the Constitution, because the Constitution no longer applies. And the Constitution, the original Constitution, said that Congress would have the power to issue the money, and only Congress. But Congress gave that away to this private bank called the Federal Reserve. And that's why they had to bring in income tax at the same time. Up to this point, income tax was not used, or was not foisted upon the people. But now they have to bring in income tax, because what happens is the bank loans the money to America, or issues, and America has to pay it back with interest. So where are they going to get that interest from? They have to get it from the people. That's why the people are the security for the loans that America has taken out, both in the past, and they don't really take out loans anymore because they just issue money all the time. But the loans in the past, the American people themselves are the security, but they had to bring in income tax to pay the loans. Okay. Now, I'd like to explain why we don't know these things. And even if we ought to, we don't know them. And I'd like to also explain how this affects our church. So if you want to do some more research, I would suggest you write down this: the Reece Commission, REECE Commission. It was a congressional committee which was set up to investigate tax-free corporations. Now, what these bankers and oligarchs do is they set up tax-free foundations, tax-exempt foundations. They pour billions of money into these foundations, because when they make donations to their own foundations, it cuts down their tax obligations. So they put billions of money into these foundations, and then they use these foundations for nefarious affairs like social engineering, changing the American culture slowly over time. And these foundations have been going since the early 20th century, maybe even before. And by the 1950s, people began to get suspicious about what they were doing. And so the Reece Commission was set up to investigate what they are doing. And a man by the name of Norman Dobbs, if you want to, it's DODD, and you can see him on YouTube as well, because I just looked it up this evening, and he's still there. And he was the chief investigator. And he wrote a report for the Reece Commission. And in the most interesting, possibly the most interesting thing in the report was that he discovered that what the purpose of these foundations was to make it so that it was possible for the Soviet Union, because it was the Soviet Union back then, and America to merge together. In other words, socialism and capitalism were going to merge together. That was the purpose of the foundations. And so therefore, what these foundations do is they take control of the medical and the educational systems in America, and they preach socialism and allopathic medicine. Now, the reason why they do that is because, or the reason why, how they do that is because they went to the government, and you got to remember, they're all part of the corporation. There's not a willingness on the part of the government or these oligarchs to do anything that is good for the average person. They're working for the interests of the corporation, both the government and these foundations. So what they did was they went to the government, they went to the corporation, and they said, give us the power, or give us the right to standardize education and standardize medicine. And what that meant was they were trying to iron out all the different approaches to education and medicine, and so that everything becomes uniform and everybody is teaching and practicing the same thing. In other words, they want to get their tentacles into the cultural levers of American society in order to change American society. Because you've got to remember, their purpose, their goal is to merge capitalism and communism together for the benefit of the oligarchs, of course. Now, how this applies to our church is very interesting. It's extremely interesting, because what we did, as you know, Ellen White told us to set up educational and medical institutions, but she also said we should not be tied to the world by one single thread. So that went on for a while, and the young people who were educated in our institutions began to complain, because when they were finished with their education in our institutions, they didn't have that piece of paper. They didn't have that piece of paper that entitled them or gave them the social and political and economic, possibly, ability to work in a institution other than our own. They couldn't really work out in the world because nobody would accept their education. You see, because these foundations wanted to make everything uniform. They wanted to get rid of independent medical and educational institutions. So our brethren in the 1930s, they had a meeting about this, and I used to have a copy of the minutes of this meeting, and I don't know what happened to it. I probably lent it to somebody and never got it back, but I do remember what's in those minutes. And they're sitting there discussing, are they going to go in to what they call accreditation? In other words, the go into the approved system set up by these foundations. And incidentally, they actually say in the minutes, they know that the government is not behind this accreditation system. It's these foundations. They actually quote the name of the foundations in the minutes. They know this. This has nothing to do with the official government, which is really the corporation. So they know that these accreditation systems are set up and controlled by private institutions, and they decide to do it. So what this means is they are now under the control of these private foundations, like the Carnegie Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation, the Ford Foundation. These are all evil institutions. And they now have their control. They now have their tentacles into our church. And what this means is that it's always done incrementally. So they say they say in the minutes, they say, well, it's not so bad. They're not demanding heaps of things, but they do demand. They demand, for example, you must have so many books in your library, and you must do this, and you must do that, and to accept these accreditation standards, it costs our church millions of dollars to upgrade and change whatever these accreditation systems were asking them to do. But that was just the beginning. After a while, by the way, this was originally just applicable to our higher institutions like colleges and universities. But then after a few years go by, then they say, well, if you're going to keep your accreditation, then all the students that come to your institutions, they have to be accredited as well. And so all our high schools had to be accredited. And then they also start saying, they start meddling with the curriculum. They say, if you want to keep your accreditation, you have to teach this, and you have to teach that, and you can't teach this or that. And so that's how our churches, our institutions have been totally destroyed. They're not fit for purpose anymore. They are under the control of these accreditation people, and our church leaders are not willing to do anything about it. But our people, our Adventist people, don't know these things. And we don't know, especially in America, they don't know their own history. And the reason they don't know their own history is because their history has been corrupted by, what was it? George Orwell said, those who control the past control the future, and those who control the future control the present, or something like it. So what I'm trying to say is they have totally subverted everything in America, and this is why nothing of importance is taught in American schools anymore. It's all propaganda. The only thing that is really taught is disciplines like mathematics and engineering. You can't really muck around with those too much. So they're pretty, computer skills they teach. But if you go to a class on humanities or by the way, economics is one of the most they certainly never teach the truth about economics. So like, where does money come from? You can yeah, well, you can go on the streets with a microphone and ask people in America, where does money come from? And nobody knows. Seriously. You may get one or two, but nobody knows, because it's never taught. All these important things, these issues which maintain a republic and a democracy, they have all been subverted, and nobody is teaching the people the truth. And that's how it's kept from the people, and that's why it's concentrated on. They're concentrating on America because they have to take down the American Republic. The American Republic has already been taken down, but the fact that remains that they can't really come out in the open and expose that to the American people, because they're afraid of the American people, who are armed to the teeth. I often say it's a very ironical thing that our freedoms in the world are only maintained because the American people are allowed to keep their arms. And so they have to be very careful how they disturb the American people's consciousness, because if these things come out in the open, they're going to be very, very angry. They have already lost their country. They just don't know it yet. But they could get it back if they were organized. But prophecy tells us they're not going to get it back. So it's already kind of over, but they still have to get the weapons out of the Americans' hands. And that's going to be a big problem. because it's like one Japanese general said during the Second World War. He said, it's impossible to invade the homeland of America because there's a rifle behind every blade of grass. And all tyrants, all tyrannies start off with disarming the people. Hitler did it. He disarmed the people before he came out in the open and revealed what he was really up to. So all these schemes that they have, the Great Reset and all these other things, they're not going to work very well. Establishing the New World Order, they're not going to work very well until they get the arms out of the American people's hands. That's why they have to keep the people deceived. Because if the American people found out about this, I'm sure they would take their arms up and do something about it. But they're not. They're kept in ignorance. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. It was like that back in the time of Hosea. It's like that now. They are deliberately kept in ignorance. Nothing of consequence is taught in their schools. And it's the same around the world, really. It's some places are better than others, but we are all proper. The only thing we are consume, the only thing that we consume in the way of news media is propaganda. It's the same everywhere. It's not just America. It's so bad. It is so bad. One CIA director by the name of Casey, he said that the CIA has always had this project called Project Mockingbird, where they have infiltrated the mass media. And one of them, his name was Bill Casey, or William Casey, he said, we will know that we have when everything the American people believe is false. He actually said that. So in the end, at the end of the day, what we have to do is we have to be very careful where we get our information from. We have to be very skeptical about everything that is foisted upon us. And a good place to start is stop consuming mass media. You must absolutely stop consuming it. It's just so evil. And sometimes you can see it, but I've been fooled. I've been fooled watching mass media. I've been manipulated. What they do is they manipulate your emotions. They get you through our emotions, and that's how they manipulate us. But anyway, do you remember that story about the missionary I told you that went to South America and she lost her husband and her two twin daughters? She came back to North America and went around all the churches saying that she found out what Satan's secret was going to be to deceive God's people in the last days. It was going to be through television. So, and we're experiencing it right now. So that's what I wanted to share with you this evening. And I'm sorry that we've been visually impaired, but